Welcome, this is Stoddy B, and I am going to talk today about one of my I was going to say favorite card. I had to stop and think about it a little bit. It is a card that I think is really interesting, and it's a card that I think a lot of people don't understand, don't appreciate, and ultimately sleep on. And I've seen a lot of people ask questions about it, so I figured it probably makes sense to talk a little bit about it because I think people that really know the game and are familiar with Romulans or cloaking fleets especially look at it and realize it's pretty good. I think the people that are new to the game or are maybe less familiar with cloaking fleets, especially Romulans, you look at it and you kind of wonder why would I use this? It seems like it's probably not bad, but I don't really know when to use it. And I think it's because of a few misconceptions. So before I get too deep, this is my first video, so I wanted to take a minute just to talk a little bit about what am I doing here. So I am a relatively speaking new player to Star Trek Attack Wing. I've been playing, I think, for 2 years technically, which probably I shouldn't be calling myself a new player, but I still feel like a new player. And given that the game is so old and fresh blood is not actually all that common, it makes me, I think, stand out a little bit as still one of the newer involved players. So that being said, I wanted to make content from a few different perspectives. One, helping people follow in my footsteps. If you are kind of interested in Star Trek Attack Wing, if you are just getting into it, whatever, I really hope to give you more content than is already out there to help you along, find out more about the game, get started, because there really isn't that much, especially current content, that helps with that. The other thing I want to do is really analyze the game and talk about its design elements, really get into what makes the game tick, what maybe is good, what maybe could be improved, what are things to kind of consider when you're playing, and things of that nature. And on the one hand, I think that I can offer a lot of insight on that, but then on the other hand, as a newer player, there's a lot that I don't know. So my hope is not only to educate others, but also to be educated. And throughout this process of trying to explain things and analyzing things, I expect to learn quite a lot. And I also expect that people who are watching the content will instruct me and guide me as well. So if you guys see that I've made any mistakes or maybe there's something I haven't thought about, please let me know. And I do also want to give a shout out to a friend of mine. This is Cleon1701. I know him as Michael. He is a big participant in the online space for Star Trek Attack Wing, and he started making videos. And I was thinking for a while about how I really wish there were more videos for Star Trek Attack Wing, how maybe I should do it, but I'm too new and whatever. And I really like what he's doing. If you haven't, please go check him out. His channel, I think, is called Memory Gamma. So check that out. Star Trek Attack Wing, Memory Gamma, and definitely give him a like. but all that said, I like what he's doing. I also there are things I kind of wanted to chime in with as well, and I thought, what's stopping us, right? We need more content creators. Why not get out there? So with all that aside, let's go ahead and get into today's actual topic, the card itself, Nevala. So this is a card, again, people ask about it, and usually the question is kind of like, where would I use this? How is this useful? I'm not sure why this works the way it does, or what it's a tool. I don't know what to use the tool for, basically. And I can understand where they're coming from. Let's go top to bottom, and we'll kind of talk along the way about why someone might be confused about it. And again, if you're really familiar with the game, you probably already think this is good, but let's take a look. So it is a unique crew upgrade called Nevala. This is a Romulan card, 3 SP, keep that in mind. So the first ability is increase the captain skill of the captain equipped to the ship by 1 or by 3 if it's a Romulan captain. So already that's pretty good. 3 SP for 1 captain skill is not exactly amazing, but 3 SP for 3 captain skill is nothing to be upset about, and captain skill is a very relevant thing to be increasing. If you are playing a low or middling captain skill captain, it behooves you to run a card like this. It can really make the difference. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of how, but the short version is that captain skill is relevant to the game. And even if you're running a high captain skill captain, it can still be very beneficial to push it even higher, because a lot of the times when you're looking at these tournament builds, people are showing up with 9, 10, 11 captain skill. And, if you're running something like a Shinzon who starts at 9, you're not really guaranteed to be top of the captain skill chain. And if you need or want to be, I mean, obviously everything being equal, you usually do. But if you need to be high on the captain skill, then you need to be running a card like this. Now, let's talk about, I guess, what about this maybe isn't good? Well, one thing I don't love about it is that captain skill increases are applicable to rule of 3, which does mean that if you're running an admiral, you're not going to benefit further than 3. Even if the admiral has +2, your captain skill is only going to be adjusted by 3 if it's Romulan. And, there could be hypothetically something that reduces your captain skill. If that was the case, then yes, it would matter that you had more than 3, but, that's not a super common thing, I suppose, is what I'm going to say. That's really the worst thing I can say about it. The only other thing I would say is the cost. And, 3SP is getting into that territory where, it's not a Federation card. It's not a Federation crew where it has 2 SP and some amazing ability, which seems to be kind of the run-of-the-mill these days. And 3 SP usually gets you something really, really nice in Federation. This is a Romulan card. Now, it's a modern Romulan card, so its SP is going to be pretty effective, but you always have to think, not just is this good and is it good for my ship, but you also need to be thinking about what else could I get for this SP? What else could I be putting in this slot? I think that 3 SP is pretty reasonable for a captain skill increase, especially if you're getting 3 captain skill out of it. Now, if I was running this on a captain who is not a Romulan captain, then I really need to be capitalizing on the second ability, because 3 SP for 1 captain skill is not really the going rate. 2 SP for 1 captain skill I wouldn't be upset about, but 3 is a little much. Now, 3 is a very reasonable cost for 3 captain skill. I would love to see it at 2 if that was, in a vacuum, but 3, honestly, like you could completely ignore the bottom of the card, and this really wouldn't be a bad card to play. That's something I want to emphasize, because when someone asks, when would I run this, why would I run it, I think it's important to consider that the top of the card is actually pretty good for the cost. But, let's move on from that. The second part of the ability is the one that I think throws people off. When defending, second part of the card, when defending, spend an evade token beside this ship, place a battle station token beside this ship. How this works is you have your ship, I have my ship, you have Nevala, I don't. I shoot at you. At that moment, before I roll dice, you can decide if you want to spend the evade token, and if you do that, you replace it with a battle stations token. So, how does this throw people off? I think a lot of people think as far as, I am defending. If you're shooting me, I probably want the evade token, and if I have to spend it before you even roll your dice, then I don't really know if I want the battle stations token or the evade token, but I'm defending, so why wouldn't I just play it safe and stay with the evade token? I think a lot of people just think of it as, I need to be on the defensive because you're shooting at me. So how is this beneficial, basically? I think that's misguided, and I think that ultimately it's not really appreciating the interplay of where this card is going to be ran. If you're running this on a Federation ship, then I don't think that's a very unreasonable stance. I do think that even there it could potentially shine, but with different combos and things like that. So, for example, Tea Earl Grey Hot is a card that I think stands to combo with Nevala okay, and that could be on a Federation ship without an insane cost. So, for example, you have Tea Earl Grey Hot, they shoot at you, you spin the evade token, replace it with a battle stations token, which turns into an evade and a scan. So you're basically just getting a scan for free and removing a time token from something. I don't think that's terrible, but that's not the point. So it is true that you're defending, and I think the default assumption is that you should keep the evade. When you start to get down into the numbers, you start to realize that this is actually not really how it works. You need to consider the battle station is extremely powerful if you are on a ship that is rolling a lot of defense dice, i.e., a cloaked ship. So let's think about a couple of ships that you would kind of see Nevala on. A D'Deridex is relevant, kind of giving you previews here, and a Riemann Warbird is also relevant. Okay, these are kind of the two quote-unquote capital ships. You also have a Valdor, which is good for cost. But usually, if you're actually running a ship that's supposed to be taking things out in Romulan's territory, it's going to be one of those three ships. And so we have to kind of think about, well, what do the defense values look like if you're actually defending with them? Well, they have native 2 dice, and if you're cloaked, that's going to turn into 6. 7 if you're at range 3. And this is assuming that they don't have anything like scan tokens or anything like that. But if ignoring all that for the sake of simplicity, you're looking at about 6 dice. Even if you were on something like a Cleon ship, or any other, basically, if you're cloaked, it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 7 dice usually, assuming they don't have any kind of scans or whatever. The battle stations token, and this is key, because I'm going to start talking about probability, the battle stations token starts to shine once you get past a certain threshold for defense dice, and it actually outshines the evade token. The evade token is not strictly worse, but if you look at probability, it becomes, on average, the battle station token becomes, on average, better as you add more dice. So you have to think about, where is this card going to be ran? And it's a Romulan card, and it benefits Romulan captains, so it's most efficient on a Romulan ship, which is almost always going to cloak, so it's almost always going to have between 5 and 7 defense dice. In other words, where you want to put this is where it already slots in really well. What people are missing is that immediate assumption of, why would I spend my evade token when I'm getting shot? And how is the battle stations better? Don't I want the evade? And then I think they run into some complexity with captain skill and thinking through, if this thing is increasing my captain skill and I don't need the evade when they attack me. So I'm jumping a little all over. Let's start over. So if my captain skill is high, that means I shoot first. And if I have an evade token by my ship, then I can't spend it offensively. Then you shoot me, by default, I want the evade token, I think is what people think. And if I was going to spend it for battle stations, well, maybe that's great, but I wouldn't then be able to spend it offensively. So I think they look at the top and the bottom of the card together, and then they wonder how that's supposed to go together. I think that other people also think about it further and think, well, what if my captain skill is lower? Then the second ability might be better, because if I have the evade and I don't need it, then I can switch it out for battle stations and then shoot back. But the problem is that, or where they think the problem is that you have to spend the evade before you know if you need it or not. So, and I think that's oversimplifying. Of course, like, sometimes something with very few attack dice might shoot you, and you realize that you didn't actually need the evade token because the bigger thing didn't shoot you or something. So, I mean, there are definitely still cases where this could still be good even from that standpoint. But let's get into the meat of why this is actually not bad. Okay? So, looking at this is a table I did. I did it ahead of time because I didn't want to sit here and explain all my math and make you guys watch me fill in the table. But the first column, or the first row here, first column, is going to be the evade value of a ship. Then we're going to be looking at what, if you roll that many defense dice, what's the probability, what's the percentage chance that you're going to get one or more battle stations, just for the sake of talking through that. Then we're going to talk about the expected number of evade results, the expected number of evade results if you have a single evade token by your ship, and the expected number of evade results if you have a battle stations token by your ship. So, looking at this, we can see that as we add dice for defense, we are going to significantly, I know I jumped from 1 to 4, keep that in mind, right? This isn't 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 1, 4. But as you see, it does jump quite a bit, and it continues getting very high as you get up into the 5 and 6 range. So if I look at this, right, so one defense die, Well, the probability of me getting a battle stations is 25% because there are two out of the 8 faces of an evade die have a battle stations on them, which ultimately is 2 over 8, which is 1 over 4. So that's the percentage chance you roll a battle stations. Your chances of a battle stations, here we'll drag this over, battle stations, 2 faces or battle stations, plus the 3 evade sides. Okay, that's 5 sides for battle stations or evade over your 8 total sides. There's a 63% that you're going to get battle stations or evade on a single die. So this is important because this is what you're looking at on a single die to the likelihood of evasion, but that's compared to 3 over 8. Whoops. If you're not doing battle stations. So you almost, this is loose math, but you almost double your chances. Maybe that's a little generous, but you significantly increase 0.63 basically versus 0.38. You're significantly increasing your chances of evading if you have a battle stations with you, and that's even on a single die. And then that effect is significantly increased and realized as you get more dice, because the evade token is only considered 1 token. It doesn't do anything to your dice. The battle stations token cares about how many battle station results you get, and the probability of getting battle stations only goes dramatically higher as you get more dice. So that's essentially what we're looking at. So on a single die, 25% chance for battle stations, 0.375 expected evade results. So what this means is that if you roll a single die, this is weird probably for people who aren't really familiar with math, but if you roll a single die, it's expected that you're going to get an evade about 0.375 times. So less than 1 is essentially the important part. Roughly a third of the time, you can expect that's going to come up as an evade result. The rest of the time it's not. You can do an important, I won't get into all this, but like you can do some kind of analyses about, basically it's like, if the expected value of your evades is less than the expected value of their hits, then you can expect that on that exchange you're going to take damage, and vice versa. If the expected amount of your evades is greater than the expected value of their hits, then you can expect you will not take damage. That's not a guarantee. We're talking about averages. But it's important because you should bet on the average every time. If you bet on the average every time, you're going to come out on top. So if your expected value, or if the expected difference between their attack and your evade puts you on top by 0.05 or something, yes, many times they will shoot at you and you will take damage. But if you do that enough, more often you're not going to take damage than you will take damage. So it's important to analyze these things. So expected number of results on a single die, 375. If you add your 1 evade token to that, that increases your number of evades as the expected value by 1, so 1.375. And your expected number of evades with only a battle stations token goes up to 0.625. So this is looking at that. How many faces do you have? This is what I did before. This right here. So you have your 2 battle stations faces plus 3 evade faces over your 8 total faces on your die, gives you 0.625, and that ultimately is your expected number of evades when it comes to rolling with single die. And this is kind of important to understand because all of the rest of the numbers are sort of extrapolated from this. So if you go up to let's talk about 5 or 6 dice, because this is more what you're going to be seeing. If you're on a Cleon ship and you're cloaked, you're usually going to be looking at 5 dice. If you're on a Romulan ship and you're cloaked, you're probably looking at 6, right? So let's just start with the Romulans, because that's, her faction is Romulan. The probability of 1 or more battle station results, this is, I don't care, like you could roll blanks or evades, doesn't matter. I just want to know, are you going to get a single battle stations or more battle station results? So what this ultimately looks like is 1 minus the probability that you roll anything else. I don't care what else. All blanks, all evades, some combination of them. It's 1 minus the probability that you don't get any battle stations, because I'm curious about the probability of you getting a single battle stations or more. 82%, 82.2%. Why is this relevant? Okay. I did a bad job setting this up. So, what we're analyzing is, are you going to spend the evade? Is it better to spend the evade on this ability to change out for battle stations, or is it better to keep your defense, your evade token? And this is ultimately the important determinant. So, if you're shooting at me, I can keep my evade token, and I know I have, no matter what I roll, I'm going to reduce your attack by 1. That's important, but that is also the maximum amount that I can reduce your damage by with that token. So I have to rely on my 6 dice to actually come up with evade results, which, not super likely. On any given one of these dice, I'm only expecting 0.375 evade results. So let's look at that, right? So I roll 6 dice. I'm expecting, with just the dice, to get 2.25 evade results. If I keep my evade token, that turns into 3.25. All right. That's not irrelevant. That's actually a pretty solid dodge, right? But you'll notice, because I've added so many dice, and it's so likely that I'm going to get at least 1 battle stations, if I spend a battle stations and it converts a single one of my dice to an evade result, that was, for the most part, basically just as good as my evade token would have been. There's some nuance there. We'll get back to it. So if I spend an evade and it gives me an evade, it cancels one of your hits, awesome. If I spend a battle station and it cancels one of your hits, awesome. In that case, it was effectively the exact same thing. But here's where the battle stations is better. The battle stations can convert any number of my battle station results that I roll. And so this probability is 1 or more. This is the probability that's going to be at least as good as my evade token, right? The important part is, though, is that some of the time, a very infrequent amount of the time, I will get like all blanks, and then the battle stations would have been worse. But the vast majority of the time, I'm going to get 1 battle station, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And in every case where it's more than 1, me having the battle stations was better than me having the evade. The only exception to that, not to get away from the point, if you roll all blanks and you have the evade token, then the evade token's better. If you get all evades, the evade token can stack on top of that. So if I get 6 evade results on my dice, I can then spin the token and get 7 evade results. Battle stations can't do that, right? But still, if I don't need 7 evade results, I just need some, then probabilistically, there we go, this is going to be better for me to do a battle stations. So again, 3.25 expected evades if I spend the evade token with 6 dice. When we do battle stations instead, the average or the expected number of evades turns into 3.75. It is better than keeping the evade. So this is ultimately the key, right? Especially because you might have more than 1 evade token. So one of the builds I'll show in a minute, you actually can stack evades, and you don't really need like 3, 4, or 5 evades. But having one of those be battle stations means you can spend it when you need it, or you can shoot back and have battle stations quality, which is awesome. So ultimately, here's the short version. That's laughable. Anyway, here's the short version. More dice increases the likelihood that you will get 1 or more battle stations dramatically. At least 1 battle stations means that your battle stations token is just as good or better than your evade token would have been. So once you add more dice, battle stations is actually statistically better for you to use on evasion than a single evade token would have been. So now your question, if you're really keeping up, and more power to you if you are, don't feel bad if you're not. I'll get back to this like normal stuff in a minute. Your question is probably, well, this is going to bug me if I don't do it. What is, where is the point where, like, okay, cool, like 5 dice, I should do battle stations, right? Because this number is higher than this number. 6 dice, I should do battle stations because this number is higher than this number. Sure, but should I do it at 1, 2, 3, 4? Like, where is the point where I should not make this trade, right? I think there are a few places where you don't want to make the trade, but if you're only looking at the numbers, 4 is the magic number for evade dice, is where you start to see that that 2.5 expected value with an evade token mirrors the 2.5 expected value with a battle stations token. So if you're rolling 4 defense dice, is this a better trade, or should you stay where you are? I think the answer boils down to the situation that you're in. What kind of attack are you taking? What kind of, how much hold do you have left? What abilities do they have? What abilities do you have? Stuff like that. If you need, basically, like, I can't take a single damage, right? Then I would say probably stick with the probably stick with the evade because it's a sure thing. You reduces as much as possible. If the idea is like you can potentially take the maximum of their attack, you just don't want to, I would go battle stations because it's a little swingier. You're going to have some defense rolls where you don't benefit from it, and you'll have some defense rolls where you benefit amazingly from it. But the point is that, on average, you're going to be looking at about the same, and you'll get to cancel them all. But this is important, right? Basically, like, can you let one damage through or not? Is a version of the question I would be asking myself. There are other factors too, like, do you need to cancel a crit? Do you need to cancel this? Do you need to cancel that? Like, how much damage can you take in one go? Whatever. But like, if you ultimately, the safer bet probably is going to be the evade token. But once you get below 4 dice, that's where you start to actually be looking at the evade token being a lot more appealing, and battle stations kind of just being a nice thing to consider. There is an exception to that. I probably should have made another table. I'm kind of kicking myself for not doing that, but that's not the point. Let's just stay focused. So if you're rolling 1, 2, or 3 evade dice, and you're not on any kind of a special ship that gets benefits that we should talk about in a minute, then really you need to be sticking with the evade token most of the time. Now, if you're looking at trading, right, and this is kind of the important, like, subtle part of the ability, if you spin the evade token for the battle stations, you could just be saying, look, he's only throwing like 3 dice at me. He doesn't really have quality. I have a bunch of hull. I'm just going to let him hit me and trade this for a battle station so I can shoot him back with a battle stations token. That's a very valid strategy, and I would consider using it when you're in that position where you can just take the damage and you're probably going to be safe. Yeah, trade for the battle stations and then shoot them back. That's what you should do for sure. But now that we kind of understand the card, this is what I want to say. Increasing your captain skill is very good. If it's on a Romulan captain, super good by +3. This ability is a sleeper. If you're on a cloaked ship, this is almost always better for you to use than to not use, and you should really be considering using it. It's good for counterattacks when you don't need to spend the battle stations. It's also good for dramatically increasing your evade results on ships that have a lot of defense dice. So if you're rolling like 7 defense dice, this is just bonkers. You probably don't even need an evade token. You just use the 1 battle stations you have. And kind of saying in the hypothetical of you doubling up on multiple tokens, right? So where does this card shine? We already said it shines on a Romulan ship with a Romulan captain, but you can put it all kinds of places. And I have 2 builds I want to talk about. Actually, I think I have 3 builds. 3 builds I want to talk about. So the first one is where I think she most obviously shines. So looking at this is the Balak. I think that this is a really good use case for our friend Nevala. This Derdex class has the following ability. When defending, you may reroll 1 of your defense dice. If this ship is cloaked, you may reroll any of your defense dice. And, there you go. Hopefully you can see it better. That is a really strong ability, period. Right? Like, you're already rolling, even if you weren't cloaked, 2 dice for evades, and then you reroll 1, is a very reasonable defense value in this game, and you would do a pretty good job with 6 hull and 4 native shields of just rolling around and being more defensive than the average Federation ship without any special upgrades, right? That's pretty good. If you factor in Nevala, it's fantastic. Here's part of why. Because we already talked about you get up to 6 evade dice if you're cloaked, and Battle Station starts to really do well when you increase the number of dice. But here's the thing, on that reroll, it's a dramatic improvement, a hugely dramatic improvement. Let's talk a bit about why. So, if you are looking at when do you re-roll? When you get a blank. Because if you have a Battle Stations token and the die comes up Battle Stations, you're just going to leave it on Battle Stations and spin the Battle Stations token. If you get an evade result, that's what you wanted. You're not going to re-roll it. If you get a blank, it's not doing anything for you, so you're going to re-roll it. So if you roll your 6 dice and they all come up blanks, you're going to re-roll all of them, right? Here's what's important, though. A couple things. I keep saying here's what's important. A couple things that are important here. So again, we talked about you have 3 evade results and you have 2 Battle Stations results. That's 5 possible positive results that you're looking for on an 8-sided die. So on any given die, this is what you're looking for. It's about 63% chance that you're getting what you want. The opposite is true, right? So about 3... Wait a minute. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Oh, that's right. Because there are 3 blank faces on the evade die. I get the attack dice and the evade dice mixed up. So if there are 3 blank faces on the evade die, that it means that about 38% of the time you're going to be re-rolling these dice if you're cloaked on the Balak, because you're trying to find, you're not looking for blanks, you're looking for Battle Stations or evades. So then you're happy if they come up as a Battle Stations or evade. You're only unhappy if it comes up a blank again, which the probability of that we just calculated is 0.375. So the only times that you're unhappy when you're defending as the Balak, when it comes to just rolls, is when you get a blank, you re-roll it, and then you get a blank again. And the probability of that, right, 0.14. Okay, that's not very... This is only 1 die, and that's very unlikely. Right, so we're talking about an 86% chance. Sorry, that's not right. We're talking about a 14% chance. We're talking about an 86% chance of you getting a Battle Stations or an evade result when you're able to re-roll that single die. That is huge. And it's so much bigger because of the fact that you're getting the Battle Stations benefit. If you only look at this as the 3 out of 8, right? So that's 6.25 is your 6.25 is like when you're 0.625 is when you're not happy, right? Because you have the 3 evade results. So the opposite of that would be 5 either Battle Stations or blanks. You don't want those if you don't have the Battle Stations, so you would re-roll those, right? So 0.625% of, or sorry, 62.5% of the time, you are not going to be happy with your initial die roll if you don't have Battle Stations, but the Balak will let you re-roll, and of those times, 0.625 of them, you're going to be unhappy again, okay? So that means that 39% of the time with a single die, you're going to be disappointed on the Balak's single die roll. Now keep in mind, you do get 6, so these numbers are kind of hypothetical, but the point is look at what a big difference that made. So 61% of the time, you're going to get an evade result if you can re-roll that single die. That's pretty significant, but think about the difference between the 61% and this 86% that we looked at when we added the Battle Stations result. And that's on 1 die. And we already know that number 1, you're already way more likely with the re-rolls and multiple dice to get a lot of evades. And so this is going to be really high anyway, but we also have already seen that as you add more dice, Battle Stations is a huge deal. So I haven't calculated the actual probability to give you actual numbers, but on re-roll defenses, a Battle Stations token with 6 dice, you are barely ever going to be touched. And that is a very big benefit. So this is something I kind of threw together. I think she's very good on the block. I think she's good on basically any cloaking ship that wants to be evasive. And I think that even on a ship that doesn't necessarily quote unquote need to be evasive, I think that she's a good 3-point dip to get a very solid defensive ability and then also increase your captain skill. That's a very reasonable cost for this benefit. And it's interesting, honestly, with that in mind, that we don't see her show up more in tournaments. But let's get talking about the build. So you could run any number of things, and I don't want to make this a memory gamma video. I'm not going to show you like all the thought process. I threw this together. I'm not claiming that this is good. I'm not claiming it's going to win you a tournament. I'm claiming that this has really good synergy and is a reasonable showing that could be effective if you sat down with it, certainly in casual play. And I think that with a little bit of thought and time, you could turn this into something really good. So the Balak, very defensive ship natively, with Nevala, an extremely defensive ship. The only key is you need to make sure you have an evade token. Well, how do we do that? Tarul is a really good friend of ours. 2 SP, she gives you a Romulan cloaking device, which is a card you probably want to run anyway. It's an extremely good card. And guess what? It costs 2 SP. So Tarul, if you have the slot for her, basically just means you get this for you're getting Tarul for free in a sense, because you'd probably be bringing Romulan cloaking device anyway. Well, here's the nice thing. When you perform the cloak action, which you're probably going to be doing all the time because you're a Romulan, but also because you only get the maximum benefit of the Balak ability if you're cloaked. So anyway, when you perform this action, you get an evade token. What a coincidence and what a good synergy. So you cloak, which you want to be doing, makes you more defensive, makes it less likely that you're going to get a target lock or whatever. You do it. You then maximize your defenses, but then you get the evade token, which whenever you get shot at, you turn into a battle stations token, which we know is actually a more powerful defensive benefit on the Balak and in this situation. So, man, there you go. You're now extremely defensive, and you're doing what you would have wanted to have done anyway. You've done nothing. You've done nothing that you wouldn't have done already. So what else can we do? Well, we know that we're going to want to spend our action cloaking because we need to maximize the ship ability. Now we have to rule. We need to be making sure that we're doing that and also getting the evade token, which now that's our engine, right? We're cloaking, we're getting the evade, and we're super defensive. So we need a way to do something on top of that. Like, we're super defensive, we're untouchable, but that's great. What are we going to do with it? We can't just fly around taking shots all day. We need to shoot them back. We need to do something effective. This can't just be like it needs to be a support ship at the very least. It needs to, affect change. Well, here's where Shinzon comes in. He already has a native 9 captain skill, so he has a pretty high captain skill. With Nevala, he's now 12. You're probably the highest captain skill on the board, or probably at least tied for it, which means that you're going to be shooting first most of the time. That's really good. Okay. And the other nice benefit is he adds battle stations to the action bar. So you'll more frequently be able to get battle stations if you want it or need it, which you've already established is a very powerful thing on this ship. It's an extremely good defensive benefit, but obviously, if you look at the math, a battle stations is basically just as good as target locking. I think that a lot of people who don't really think about it or haven't really analyzed the game assume that target lock is a better offensive ability than battle stations, but if you look at the numbers, the breakdown's actually basically the same. Battle stations is actually a very good offensive quality as well. So you could use it as an offensive ability when you don't need it for defense. And when you use it for defense, you're untouchable. So it's good you have it here. But the important part is you get a free action if you're cloaked. So you get to do something off your action bar for free. So we action bar cloak. That gives us the evade token. We now perform a free action, which would be either an evade, another evade, or a target lock. And then Romulan cloaking device gives us a free sensor echo. So we are doing basically every action on the bar. We're cloaking, we're sensor echoing, and we're doing either an evade or a target lock. And we already have an evade token from the Tarul ability. That's really solid. Being able to shoot someone at Captain Skill 12 with a target lock, or I guess you would have to, so being able to shoot them with a battle stations is already a potent ability. And you, because you get the evade from to rule. Oh, right, that's what I missed. Okay, in my explanation, sorry. You cloak, you're sensor echoing, you are evading, target locking, or battle stationing. There we go. So you could cloak evade, you could sensor echo, and then you could also battle stations, and that's basically just as good as target locking if you don't need the lock for an ability. And it's really potent is the short version. Okay, but here's really the downside of this. 3 attack dice is not going to do anything. You might have battle stations, it doesn't matter, right? You're going to be pinging people at worst. We need to find a way to up that. Okay. I'm not saying I think there are probably way better ways to do this. Here are 3 cards that I think do this really well. Dominion War Retrofit is going to increase our printed primary weapon value by 1, brings us up to a 4. You don't see it here, but that's the case. And then it also adds the slot that we need so that we can have 2 crew on this ship, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do that. It also leaves you free with tech slots, even with Romulan Cloaking Device, because Tarul brings it for free without a slot. So it's if you can go above 50 SP, this is a really good set of circumstances for you. You can really build this thing out. But either way, this gives us a shield, which we're not too worried about because we're already super defensive and we want to cloak basically every chance we get. But if you ever needed it, that'd be nice. But yeah, so 4 attack dice is important. You still really want to be pushing it up to at least 5 to really feel effective, though. I won't go into the math on that, but 5 is kind of where you start to feel relevant. So let's look at additional phasers array is 3 SP for 1 attack die when attacking. I think this is probably a reasonable exchange. I would love it if it was 2, but given that it's a when attacking, I can completely understand why it's 3. So yeah, I mean, you go up to 4 with Dominion War Retrofit. When attacking, you're rolling an extra die. That brings you up to 5. And then if you're running Tactical Superiority Commander, that could put you up to 5 if you don't have anything else with a primary weapon value in the fleet that's at least a 4. Or at least nothing that's going to be flying close to you, which I would say probably don't bring this if you have other 4s, period. But if you do it this way, right, so that's 4 with Dominion Retrofit, 5, 6, you're rolling 6 dice. That's very solid. Even without battle stations, your expected value of hits and crits is about 3. It's definitely nothing to be upset about. And when you factor in the fact that you're shooting first, that you can have battle stations quality if you need it or want it, and also the fact that they will rarely be able to touch you, given how defensive you are, that's a really good trade-off. I think it's important to think of ships and rolls, and being able to dodge hits this effectively while still dishing out a respectable hit back is a very useful role. It's basically a tank and a gunner. It's just not as good at being a gunner as an actual dedicated gunner might be, but it's still a very respectable option. And I think it's important not to just build something that can be shot at forever. It needs to be able to do something, like I've already said. And this can do something. Is this optimal? No. Do you have other options? Absolutely. You have weapon slots. You can put other weapons in there, like torpedoes or something like that. You do have the ability to target lock with Shinzon while still cloaking and being very defensive. So I really do think that you have a lot of options here. You have the 2 tech slots, but this is just a general framework to kind of, it's a proof of concept is probably the best way to put it, to show that she's actually a really good choice. You can also, the nice thing with the captain skill is you can run a middling or low captain and make them very relevant, and there are a lot of Romulan captains that you just don't really see a lot because their captain skill, well, I assume, because their captain skill is just not very good. What are some options here? Okay, these guys. Jarek is not a bad option. He wouldn't really combo in this build super well, but I think he's good, and you could get him up to a 9 captain skill. Mendak can give you battle stations tokens, so similar effect to Shinzon. Now, you'd have to find a way to do his action, but the point is that he's very relevant when he goes up to a captain skill 9. Denatra is relevant, could be a captain skill 9. Liviana is extremely relevant and actually could slot into this build okay because she has the ability to basically cloak and give you another action. She doesn't, if I remember correctly, she doesn't synergize with Tarul because this doesn't trigger Tarul when you use her action, but If you didn't want to put Tyrul in this ship, you could potentially do the Liviana as the captain, go up to 8 captain skill, cloak, just do like cloak and then do evade off of your action bar, and then you're still getting the Nevala benefit. You might not be shooting first as often because you're only an 8 captain skill, but this only costs 3 SP, whereas Shenzon costs 6, so you could potentially beef up the ship a lot more with something else. And then the other nice benefit too is if she doesn't shoot first, then you get the benefit of doing this to be defensive, and if you end up not needing the battle stations token, then you can spend it when you shoot back. So this could be like a kind of budget option, if you will, that I think would be very effective as well. Lovok is a good one who works really well in a Daredex, but you don't really see him in play very much, and I think a lot of it is because of this 5 captain skill and just the fact that there are other options that are very good. So yeah, I mean, if you put him on here, he's an 8 captain skill. You can potentially re-roll your blanks when you're attacking and add a hit. So if you put the Balak, him, Dominion, or Retrofit, you're rolling 4 dice. It's as if you were rolling 5 because you're adding a hit, and you get to re-roll blanks. If you somehow manage to find a way to get a battle stations in there too, and you get to re-roll blanks, very likely that you're hitting with those 4/5 dice. You can also do other things like this. So again, like you potentially you're going to be rolling a lot and getting a lot of hits. Is it amazingly offensive? No, right? Like I'm not going to sit and pretend like, oh yeah, it's like super, super good. But I do think that it's very relevant. And when you're this defensive, being relevantly offensive is impressive. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think you could do some other options here. This probably is pretty lackluster, but it's yet another thing that you could be doing defensively. So you've got options, and that's the important thing to keep in mind. So where would I criticize this other than how I've been criticizing it? Well, the Balak is not super cost effective for points, so we can look at a Riemann Warbird, which unfortunately, if you boil it down, when you look at a Daredex, actually I have this on the screen. When you look at a Daredex, base cost 25, that 3 attack value is just not good enough, right? So you have to put Dominion War Retrofit, or at least something to kind of bring it up to speed. I think it's good for you to do Dominion War Retrofit. So if you do that, though, that's 3 points. That brings you up to a 28, and now you're looking at 4-2-6-3. 4-2-6-4, because the shields go up with Dominion War Retrofit. The problem is that most of the time you really don't care about shields on a cloaked ship. So 4-2-6-4, like that 4 is not very relevant. So you're really only caring about the 4, the 2, and the 6, which all those are very respectable until you look at, and for 28 points, until you look at what you can get for 4 points more. Then you're looking at 6, which is a significant step up, 2, which is the same, more hull, and a similar amount of shields. So, printed value 3, printed value 3, right? So you're getting a lot more out of it for, oh, and actually this was, yeah, exactly, okay. So you're getting a lot more out of it for a similar cost at the end of the day, and those 2 extra attack dice, definitely worth the SP difference. And we can, again, this is a different video explaining the actual math behind it, but the difference between 4 dice and 6 is actually very, very significant, especially if you can include quality. So Riemann Warbird is probably where you want to go if you really want to be offensive. Now, of course, you're trading the defensive attribute of the Balak for this offensive capability. So, you have to kind of figure out, like, what are you going to go up against? How defensive do you want the ship to be? How offensive do you want it to be? I think this is still very defensive. You're going to be rolling 6 defense dice when you're cloaked. You still have the option to do the Nevala and get the battle stations, so you're going to be doing a lot of evading. You don't get the rerolls, so it's not going to be nearly as good, but it's going to be still very good. If you do the Shenzon stuff, that all still applies, so you're getting battle stations, you're still able to cloak, you got to roll, so you're going to get the evade. It's very effective. You'll get the free sensor echo action. And at 6 dice, you really don't need anything else. And you'll notice 46 SP compared to what we were just looking at 47 SP. This ultimately comes out slightly cheaper, and I would argue is just as effective, roughly speaking. You will take more damage in this, but you will also deal more damage in this, and that might be important depending on what other ships you're bringing. So all this said, I think this is a very good card, meaning Nevala. I think that she has actually probably a lot of applications. And one other thing that I meant to mention earlier that I think is probably relevant enough that I should make the time to include it in, even though I've been talking for a long time. So, Romulan cloaking device with its sensor echoes, something that if you are one of the people I'm talking about who haven't really thought, you've slept on Nevala because you're not used to playing cloaked fleets, or you haven't really thought about how defense dice work like mathematically, we need to talk about Romulan cloaking device and captain skill. Captain skill is always important. Most people, most fleets, right? Most factions and fleets and whatever need the higher captain skill so they can shoot first. That's what they care about. There are also times when you want to lower captain skills so you can intentionally move in people's way and things like that. There are some abilities that are better if you can use them earlier in the turn, what have you. Captain skill is a very nuanced thing, but the default answer is you need it to be higher so you can shoot first. Captain skill becomes very important for Romulan fleets because of sensor echoing, especially when it comes to Romulan cloaking device. You get, every time you're cloaked, you get a free sensor echo action on a Romulan ship with a Romulan cloaking device. So you're always going to be looking for this. It's always going to be relevant. Basically every turn, you have the option to do this, and that's huge. Why? Well, because you can dodge arcs. Okay, so if I'm looking at these guys, all right, so I'm looking at these guys. All right, he's got a 90-degree forward arc. Cool. Let's say I end up right here. Well, he's in my arc too. That's great. But I'm in his arc. I don't want him to get to shoot me. Guess what I can do? I can sensor echo. All right, so we'll sync that. I can do a simple sensor echo to the side. And I don't need Romulan cloaking device for this, but it's beneficial because Romulan cloaking device lets me do this for free. Look at that. I'm out of his arc, and then I get to shoot him. He doesn't get to shoot me at all. Doesn't even matter how many defense dice I have in that case, right? But then the other big thing that's important is that I can do this with banks as well. So you'll notice that I put my ship a little bit like at an angle coming in, because that's when sensor echoes allow you to arc dodge really well. If you bank in and you're a little to the side of them, you can usually sidestep with the sensor echo, keep them in your arc and evade theirs. But something pretty wonky is that if you're using the Romulan cloaking device, you have a lot of flexibility. So if I'm looking at this, you'll notice this, okay? I would be out of arc if I went over to the end of this, which I will do. Roughly there for the sake of demonstration. Look at that. I'm in arc. So even though I didn't get my angle right, like let's say I'm less experienced on setting up my sensor echoes and arc dodging, or maybe he moved in a way I just wasn't expecting or whatever, the odds of me getting out of his arc are actually really big. But notice something. This consideration only matters if I know where his arc is, or I can perfectly predict where his arc is going to be. Trust me, perfectly predicting where his arc is going to be is a lot harder than just knowing where his arc is. So, let's take this back to basics so everyone's keeping up. If you have a lower captain skill, you activate and move first before everyone else. So if my captain skill is like a 3, I'm going to move my Reman Warbird, and then I have to take my action, and I have to decide where I'm going to sensor echo or if I'm going to sensor echo before he has moved, which means I don't know where his arc is necessarily going to be, which means I won't be able to, I have to guess if I want to arc dodge, and I might not do it at all, or I might not do it efficiently. Whereas, if he has to move and act first, and then I get to move, I already know where he is, I already know where his arc is, I know where other ships will be, I can then move wherever is the best choice at the time. And Romulan cloaking device only makes that even more potent by making it so my angles don't have to be perfect, making it so I don't have to think 3 moves ahead, and making it so that really practically any spot that's useful for me after everyone has moved is an option. Because if I look at if I look at different options here, right? If I'm starting over here, whoops. Okay, so you get those, and you also get the one bank option, okay? Look at all the options that I'm getting with these. Huge. Okay, like, that's... all of them, well, most of them, would have dodged arcs. And I have so many choices that I can make. I also can do just the regular sideways one, and I can do it the other direction too. So really, it's just, if he has a bunch of arcs everywhere, I can look and then ultimately pick, like, where is the best place for me to end up. And I have the benefit of doing that if I already know where everyone is. So very, very good. All right. So, talking about the Riemann warship versus the D'Deridex, I do think that the 6 attack dice is very good. I think you get a very good trade-off for the dice, or sorry, for the SP. I think that the D'Deridex, where is it better? It's better in that it has a 3-turn and a 2-turn that are white. The Riemann Warbird has a 3 but not a 2. I think that for me, personally, this is really good, especially when you're considering sensor echoes, because you have the ability to do all of that. Well, I guess we'll take him. He's already on the dial. Being able to have the option to do a turn like this is already a really good move. But being able to then do like a backwards sensor echo is that much more powerful, and being able to do a backwards bank echo is also really powerful. So, pretend this is my Riemann Warbird that sensor echoed, right? This is a really potent move, and knowing that you can also do it this way or this way, very, very good, and it just keeps your options open because it's more white maneuvers with more angles that you can exploit. So obviously banks are effective, but being able to turn at a tight 2 is also really, really good, especially if you need to keep them close or far. Yeah, so I mean, and it has all the standard maneuvers that you would expect or hope for. Most of them are not red. And then it has a reverse, which can be an extremely potent tool, especially if you're setting something up like the Balak with like a lot of dice. You just keep them in your arc, reverse back, and then just keep shooting, right? Where does it kind of quote-unquote fall flat in comparison? Or where, I guess, what do you get out of the Riemann Warbird? Well, you get a 6 forward. It does have the ability to rush, so if that's something you're trying to do in your fleet, then this could be a very effective ship to do that. There is a validity to that strategy. Some fleets will really struggle if you put pressure on them on turn 1 or 2. And some players will also struggle if you put pressure on them that early. A lot of people expect that they're going to kind of get set up over the course of the first 2 turns, and if you can close the gap and really put pressure on, they might fumble trying to basically coordinate to change to wherever you came from. And that's especially important it's especially exploitable if you're using the Romulan cloaking device and you're able to really come in from any given angle at any given time, because they have to basically guess where you're going to be and then potentially turn really significantly to try and line up better against you. So yeah, long story short is that this can be Romulan cloaking device is very good, is the short version. But the way that this ties into the specificity of this conversation is that Romulan cloaking device is best when you have high captain skill, which is something that Nevala gives you. So I think this is a very, very useful card. Okay, I have one extracurricular here. Using Nevala in a place where she's not obviously effective. This is an extremely goofy build that I just threw together while I was having fun. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's going to win a tournament. I'm not recommending you use it, but I think it's funny. So, and it's just a bunch of cards I happen to pull together on Utopia just to demonstrate a point. Nevala can be very effective on a ship where you have multiple evade tokens. So, and that's all I'm really trying to demonstrate here. You could have ran Kim Peck as the admiral on a Cleon ship, and then put Nevala on a Romulan ship that was in the same fleet, and you would get a similar benefit, right? So I'm not necessarily saying that you have to run it like this, but you could, and that's important. Because even at 4 SP in a build like this, I think that she still is worth it. So here we're not increasing Gowron's captain skill by 3, So that's a significant loss. But you could, right? Or, sorry, not that you could, um, but you're still benefiting from it. Is my point, and you're still benefiting from this. So if you take a fleet action, you get 3 evade tokens. It's already really hard to get past 3 evade tokens with attack dice. You basically need to be rolling 6 dice with no quality to even tie 3 evade tokens with your expected value, doing more math. But so really, like, if you're getting shot at by 7 attack dice after you've taken the Chempek ability, and you ignore your own evade dice, yeah, okay. Maybe you'll take some damage. But if you're getting shot by anything less and there's no quality, like, you're fine. So this is a very, very good defensive ability. You do have to pay for you pay a shield to use it. But, when you're looking at Nevala, number one, if you have this many evade dice, you're not really worried about losing a shield. It's a good trade. The other thing is that you can do this even if you're cloaked. You don't have to be spending an active shield. You can be spending a deactive shield token, and that's a big deal. So being able to cloak, sitting at 5 defense dice and 3 evade tokens, and then when they shoot you with your 5 evade dice, you now trade it out, so it's your battle stations evade, and 5 dice? Let's look at our numbers again. 5 dice. This is what you're expecting with just battle stations, and then you throw 2 evade tokens on top of that? That's 5.125 expected evasions. They can't touch you with most things. That's crazy. And then if you were looking at something like, again, if you're being really goofy and leaning into some stuff, you could run something like the Dravana and throw out undisabled upgrades to cancel any hits that somehow manage to make it through that. Reinforced hull is a good option on basically any Cleon ship that can run it. But yeah, going up to 7 hull, you don't need shields at that point. You don't need to worry about being cloaked. Most of the time, you're not going to be having many more than like 5 or 6 rounds in a tournament anyway. So it's not like you really need to worry about your shields. I think this is really good. You could also find a way to regenerate your shields, whatever, right? There are all kinds of things you can do with this. But that's not the point of this video. The point of the video is Nevala is a good card. I'm sure there are aspects of it that I've missed. But if you guys think of anything, please let me know. If there's something I've gotten wrong, I want to hear it. I'm realizing now I didn't talk about one thing I wanted to. I guess I needed to write a script. I was hoping I wouldn't need to. All right, what's one more thing you get with a Riemann Warbird? It's the 4 come about. So you get the reverse on the Didaredex. That's a very potent ability. A 4 come about is also a very potent ability. A 4 come about is better, I would argue, than a 3 come about. Why? Okay. So when you get to the point where you want to come about, it's very common for ships to engage around this range, right? A lot of times your first combat, you're shooting at like range 3 or range 2. And you'll notice something that if I'm moving after I'm in range 3, I'm going to probably end up around here. If I'm moving at range 2, I'm going to end up like around here, unless I'm also doing my own come about. So basically, I guess what I'm ultimately trying to say is, if someone is like here and they're going to do a come about because they want to make sure they catch you as you pass them, or if they're like here and they do the same thing, or if they end up moving kind of around here, this is all going to be kind of in your way. And the thing is I guess putting it simplistically, by the time that you want to do a come about, it's very common for ships to get a little bit cramped and to run the risk of bumping each other. And when you're doing a come about, you really don't want to be the one who bumps, because that means you don't get to turn around. So if you bump in this exact scenario where the Akira is at the end of my movement, then that's actually okay, because I would fly into him, I wouldn't turn around, but he would also be right in front of me. I would lose my action, which could be catastrophic, but the point is I'd still be able to shoot him. A 4, on the other hand, makes it a lot more likely that you're going to jump over all this junk in the middle. So after everyone starts to close in and do their own come-abouts or their own turns or whatever, it's a lot more likely you're going to jump over and then get the turnaround and have people at range 2 or 3 than a 3 come-about would give you. So that's something to think about. I do think that the Riemann Warbird has a very reasonable maneuver dial. For me personally, I find that the 2 turns are really, really good, and they leave your options really, really open, and having it to reverse is similarly as potent and can really surprise people. So, ultimately, it just depends on what situation you're in, depends on how you prefer to fly, what the rest of your fleet's doing. But I personally prefer the Deck style, but you can't really get mad at 6 dice. All right, that's everything I have to say about this. I have talked for way too long. If you have anything that you think of, please let me know. If you have any other card that you want me to talk to death, please let me know. If there's something I got wrong, I definitely want to hear it. And I hope that you guys have great games. One of the big things with me doing this is I wanted, if literally nothing else, right? I hope that me doing these causes you to get the juices flowing, sit down and think about what you want to build. And that's what I get out of watching other people's videos. I hope that I give that to you. Worst case scenario. Even if I've gotten something wrong, I hope that it inspires you when you try to prove me wrong. So, either way, great flying. Have great games. Have great times. I'll see you later. Bye.